My name is Ginger. I'm a librarian here at the Vancouver Island Regional Library System, and I'm lucky enough to work out of the Ladysmith branch. We're on unceded Snuneymuxw territory, and really appreciate being here in this beautiful land. Um, we're very grateful to have this partnership going with the Vancouver Island Master Gardeners. Like I said, it has been years, maybe 3 or 4 years. Richard, how long has it
Since
been?
21.
Yeah, amazing. That's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. So there are many, many videos on our YouTube channel. Please go back. There's a wealth of information there. And I'm gonna jump into introducing Joanne Canning, who will be presenting information today on smart water and, am I gonna say this right? Xeriscaping? Zero. Ah,
Escaping.
I was close. Okay.
Close, but no banana. That's okay.
Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about Joe. Joe Canning has learned to garden on her grandparents' Fraser Valley truck farm and in her mother's urban food and ornamental garden in Vancouver's West Side. For over 45 years, she's gardened in climates as diverse as BC's Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Island, Nova Scotia, the UK, the American Southwest Desert, and at altitude in the Rocky Mountains. In her 30 years as a master gardener, 30 years, amazing. She has helped manage community garden initiatives and taught urban food gardening to groups at risk of food insecurity. She's taught seminars at Van Dusen Botanical Gardens, horticultural associations, and garden clubs. She's also taught at VIU's Master Gardening training classes and the Horticultural Technicians Program at VIU's Payne Center. And we've been lucky enough to have her here teaching many of our virtual gardening video series. Her articles and photographs have appeared in local and international magazines, and Joanne's present focus is on helping urban gardeners develop strategies in our changing climate to keep their landscapes sustainable and beautiful. So join me in welcoming Joe.
Well, hello, everyone. Today's, we'll just do a check. So can I be heard all right? We can. Okay, good. And back to this. So today we're going to be talking about smart water. And I know from the a synopsis, we're going to be talking about dry gardens. And so a good part of that is going to be in the second part of the session. But we will start right at the beginning, if you will, about managing water in general. Now, for those of you, I'm going to be talking into the future for a minute. If you're watching a recording of this seminar, all the handouts that the attendees have been sent are also on slides. So when you want the information of a list or a link or whatnot, all you have to do is hit screen save or screen capture, and you can get that information. And because this is an educational seminar, you're not having any problems with copyright, and you can go ahead and print those for your own use. So here we are, smart water. And this is the Vancouver Island Master Gardeners. We're part of the BC Association. We're a registered nonprofit. Master Gardeners are part of an international organization. We get special training. Takes you 2 years to become a Master Gardener, and then you have to have education every year to keep it up. Now, this seminar is the property of both the Vancouver Island Regional Library, who, with great wisdom, contacted us and got us all started on this. And so if it wasn't for our wonderful librarians, we wouldn't be here. The information is science-based, accurate to the best of our knowledge. It's intended for educational purposes, and so it's your responsibility if you mess it up. You can't copy anything for commercial use, but you can certainly use it for educational purposes. And the images are either copyrighted or they're taken from public domain. We've given source acknowledgement, and we thank the commercial companies and nonprofit organizations for their use. There, whew, that's all done. Let's get on to business. Now, there are 12 reasons why you want to manage your landscapes or approach everything you do in your landscape from a water perspective. Because, of course, plants have basic needs. They air, soil, water. But when we look at it from the water point of view, and this may sound overly simple, what does it do in the garden? Well, water comes, it stays, and then it leaves. And so managing has to do with how we control that. And water is, as I say, one of the three biggies, because it allows plants to remain upright without any kind of internal skeleton. So the leaves and the stems can then respond to light and air. And it also, which is very important in terms of managing water, it mixes with air and microbes in the soil. So that is how the plants will take up their nutrients from below. So the top 12 reasons to manage your landscape with water is, of course, you want to lower your water bill. Now, here in the Pacific Northwest, it's not such a big issue, but in lots of places in the country, water bills cost a lot. Okay, $300 and $400, as opposed to 50, in this area. And even places on Vancouver Island here are very naturally dry. And they are part of what climatologists call the Mediterranean climate. We have the most northerly Mediterranean climate on the globe. At 50 degrees north latitude, it stops. So, of course, you want to have a beautiful landscape and you want to conserve district area water. Perhaps you want a fire-resistant landscape, and that also means a smart water landscape. You'll find a link to the Oregon plant list, and their plant list is wonderful because they include plants that are both fire-resistant and water-smart, so very good. Of course, if you're in a drought or just like Mediterranean climates, you have a very dry season. And by that, I mean that in the Northwest, you may have 50 inches of rain in the winter or a year. And yet for June, July, August, you may have a half an inch of rain. Everything comes at another time. And guess when you're trying to grow plants? That point. You want to maybe support more native plants. Maybe you have wet ground, so you need to manage it from the other direction. Maybe you have winter flooding. Maybe your plants are dying. Maybe your landscape is rocky and you get too much runoff. Maybe you have clay. Maybe you want to lessen the environmental impact. And maybe you want to install an irrigation system, so you need to know, where does the water come from? How long is it staying? And where is it going to? So my irrigation system needs to work in coordination with that. So let's start, of course, with the soil. The conservation of water begins with understanding your native soil. And understand another important thing about garden soil is that, as the slide said, it's imported, it's amended, it's not native soil. So it's not the same as the surrounding landscapes. And if you're growing vegetables, as I did for many years in raised beds, you've got a particular type of soil. Yet all around that raised bed is another type of landscape. So you have to be cognizant of that. Is it sandy? In other words, the water moves quickly, goes straight down through the top level, sometimes through the second subsoil, and it's too fast for plants to obtain moisture. Um, Also, because they can't get the moisture, they can't get the ingredients. So maybe you need to slow it down. Now, loamy soil is the best. It travels down, but it also spreads out in a fan pattern. And this is what the beds that we make for our precious green friends. But it's not always the best soil for things like succulents and perennials and whatnot. Or we have clay. Now, in areas like we have folks from South Carolina, where you get that glorious red mud, and that clay soil, although water penetrates it very slowly and it travels horizontally, it can be like cement, and it can be very difficult to deal with. And in the Northwest here, we actually have great patches of clay, and that's usually at a certain level, and it travels along a particular profile. And People curse it. But clay soil is really, really good soil. People say add sand. No, don't add sand. Add organics. And when you add organics, things are activated, and all the wonderful minerals in the clay make your plants very healthy. So let's look at how we're going to control things that have arrived. And you see on the right there, there's a rain chain with a drain. So the first thing we're going to do is think about collecting it and moving it, controlling that movement. And as you see, you've got your rain chain, which often makes a lovely sound, but it slows the runoff and it aerates the water. That's very important because when water is aerated, it cleans any impurities. So you can also have French drains, and you can have rain gardens, and you can have dry creeks. And we're going to talk a little about each of those, and I'll show you some images and how they fit into a dry garden. Now, one thing to remember about water at the gardener's disposal is water can be free. And I'm going to just quickly give you a bit of data. Now, a climate with 87 centimeters for our American brothers and sisters, that's 35 inches of rain a year. And you have a roof area of 1,000 square feet, or for us people, 93 square meters. You can collect 75,000 liters, or 16,500 imperial gallons, or 20,000 US gallons. Now, to give you a sense of what that means, the average for Nanaimo here in the middle of the island is about 45 inches, and it costs you about $500 a year for your water. For Los Angeles, California, they get 14 and a half inches, or 37 meters, and it costs them 800 US dollars. And in Canadian dollars, just add a third to that. That's a lot of money. Now, here we are, Columbia, South Carolina. The average is 45 inches a year, and it costs 385 US dollars a year. So you can see how you can save an awful lot of money by collecting even part of that rain and using that to your advantage. A rain barrel costs you about $100, and it goes for years and years. So even collecting 50 gallons in a rain barrel means a lot. So there's also no chlorine. And roofing materials really do not contain toxins that affect plants. You'll read about that on online. It's mostly from areas that have older roofs or areas that are in the south part of the US in that band below 45, which is Nevada, all across there. So heat and destruction by heat is a much bigger concern. But do read the scientific study out of the University of Washington. Now, remember, as I said, that when water is oxygenated, it's cleaned. So bogs or vernal springs, which are seasonal springs, rocky bottom waterways, all those act through aeration to clean the substrate. And an example is interesting from our neck of the woods. Anyone that's been in Vancouver, British Columbia, there's a beautiful park and their causeway. They were quite concerned because there was so much pollution and oil coming off it and draining into a natural lagoon that was very, very shallow. And birds were in it all the time. So you had all this pollution from the cars and the rubber and all like that, plus all the bird droppings. And they measured the outlet of that boggy, swampy place. And less than half a mile away, the water was clean. So that gives you an idea of how you can control water and control water control simply by changing how slow or fast you move it. Now, so the other thing that we can do is that we can store it. So rain barrels, which we've mentioned, and I had one gal who said, yeah, but okay, so what do I do after I've used up 50 gallons? And my response was, go do something else. Just remember you saved 50 gallons of water, and that waters a lot of plants. Or have more than one rain barrel. And you can collect water in different areas close to different plants. So you don't have to have it all off one point. There's a lovely image that I forgot to download, sorry, where there's an image of the rain coming off the roof, coming into the downspout and going over an archway and headed off into another part of the yard. And then there's a splitter that was coming down directly by the house collecting rainwater. So they had this lovely roses growing up over the arch, and there was the water being channeled quite a ways from the house. So there's lots of ways to do it. In the drier islands in the Northwest, a lot of people put in underground cisterns. Where I lived in New Mexico in the desert, that was also something people would do because, like where we lived, we did have a very deep well that tapped into an aquifer, but it was very slow. So the water moved into the cistern, and we had options on how fast we could move it. The other way to collect and store is seasonal ponds, vernal springs, which are quite natural. And here, our forests really depend on those vernal springs. Also, being able to create a vernal spring is very helpful, as well as a rain garden, simply because almost every insect and many mammals, local mammals, depend on a vernal spring or a bog at one point in their lives. And pretty important when you think of that. So the next part here, which is conserving water by design, which of course is going to be the last part of our talk. And so we're going to go through these things, and this list is on your handout. So you need to learn the different types of soil in different garden areas because, well, if you live on a slope, you'll have more than one type. Learn your seasonal wind patterns. In conserving water, controlling the wind becomes extremely important, particularly in winter. Know your right plant and right place for your climate, whether it's sun, shade, woodland, prairie. Understand that. Sometimes moving a plant 4 feet to the left is all you need. Sometimes it needs to go to the plant sale. You got to be tough. And that's how that is. You can also develop a Xeriscape design, which we're going to talk about. And you need to plan your change by priority. In other words, what's the worst thing? How can I mitigate that? And what's my budget? And then you use different landscape styles, either for the whole garden or different areas. Now, a lot of this you're already doing. And my job is to help you put it all together. This is really less of a DIY as it is to help you work with the concepts so you can apply different ideas and look at your landscape from a water perspective first. And when you get that right, the plants are happy and the landscape becomes beautiful. So one of the things that is important is rain gardens and managing wet spots. And one of the reasons for managing wet spots is, of course, standing water. Now, maybe you have low ground, maybe you have a high water table, and that can be okay, but it can also create problems. So there is a difference between low ground and a high water table. I lived in a place on the Sunshine Coast that had the most beautiful, lush green lawn that I never watered because the water table was about 2 feet below the surface. I had a lot of raised beds, but boy, did I have a lawn. Maybe there's poor drainage. Maybe you have seasonal rain, so you only have wet spots at certain parts of the year. And you have runoff from the neighboring land. Okay, so this anatomy of a rain garden is in your handouts, and do watch our special gardening video on rain gardens. Now, you're going to deal with low and wet spots with either creating a seasonal stream or a dry bed that is seasonal, a rain garden, raised beds, which in some areas, that makes a lot of sense. In other areas, it doesn't. And I'll give you an example. The place that we just moved to, there was a little rhododendron. And the two rhododendrons about 6 feet away were very healthy, and she was really struggling, and I couldn't save her. And so when I took her out, I noticed that the way that she had been planted was she was planted up in a raised bed, but the way she was planted, the soil created a wick. So the soil was always saturated, and she essentially drowned in an area that was dry. So understand what is beneath your raised beds and how your soil is affecting that. You can have a bog garden, which is a 12-month solution, or you can create a fish pond or a wading pool and use solar fountains for circulation. Now, the value of a rain garden is that it cleans water because it's moving it and controlling it, and the plants do the job. You control the nutrient loss by slowing the runoff. You control erosion. You have very interesting plants, and you attract pollinators, and it acts as a catch basin. So you can actually have more than one outlet. So that's a very important part of having a rain garden. And let me see. Now, one of the things before we go on any further is the harvesting the water as it comes in on from your roof or from other areas. And Richard, our fearless leader and panelist, harvests rainwater. And Richard, go ahead and turn on your audio and talk a little bit about how you're harvesting the water and how it's been effective for you.
Well, first of all, it was not a cheap proposition, but definitely worthwhile. My home has a flat roof, so there was no problems with the material that was going to be applied to the roof itself. My downspouts all have individual filters on them, and it's a fine mesh because on a lot of roofs you get the granular material coming off of it. And this can actually go into your cistern and cause a problem. So from the roof that goes down the downspout into a filter. From there, it gets channeled into my cistern. I have a 3,000 gallon cistern, which I collect rainwater in through the winter time. Unfortunately, I should have put in a larger one because it doesn't tide me over for the whole season. But it actually, in the next few years, with the fact that I have my plantings have been in 2 years, and the third year the roots should be pretty well established. So it will probably manage to be able to do drip irrigation for the summertime with it. From the cistern, I have a pump. It's a pressure pump, and it comes to a standpipe on the outside. And from there, it's pressurized. I just turn on the hose and water as I please. The thing is, um, with cisterns, you should always actually open the cistern, have a look inside to see if there's any muck and stuff on the bottom, or at least raise your pump off the bottom of the cistern onto a brick or something so it's not catching all that sediment in the bottom of the cistern. The other things I have found works, and I put in 2 chlorine tablets a season because after the water has been sitting in there for quite a while, there's a lot of bacteria and stuff in it. The chlorine tablets just don't sterilize it, but cut out a lot of the bad bacteria and stuff like that. Because if you're spraying that, you don't want to be inhaling it either. So that's why I put in at least a couple of chlorine pucks a year. And apart from that, I'm very happy with it, the system. The only thing I would have done differently is maybe gotten a larger cistern.
Oh, great. Thank you, Richard. And a note on chlorine is that it is extremely volatile. And when I was young and tough, I worked in fish hatcheries. And we, of course, chlorinated the water in the effluent, and we had settling ponds. And the test was those settling ponds emptied into fish-bearing streams. And we had lots of fish because chlorine bleeds off so fast that once the water hits the air, within a matter of a few minutes, the chlorine is gone. So, with a very light treatment, as Richard was talking about, you're not putting chlorine into the ground. It's gone.
It
Um,
is gone.
Yeah, and the system that, and I'm very grateful that Richard has explained his system because it's very complex. And in areas that are desert-like, this is often what you need to do if you want water at all. And when I lived in the desert, if you used up the water, you waited for the well to fill up again because it wasn't there. And so to be able to have a whole system that you're managing without um, using any groundwater is very important. For most of us, a simple rain barrel and a rain chain and a drain is sufficient. So there we go. Let's get back
If I could
to
just
the,
add something, Joe, the
oh,
fact
yes.
that the District of Nanaimo does uh, offer a $750 rebate on installing a rainwater catchment system. You have to apply for it first, send them drawings to what you're doing, and then you pay for it and they reimburse you $750. And that's the regional district of Nanaimo.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. That's very useful to know. So, it's running away with me. So if you can't move the water, keep it healthy and make it beautiful. Uh, and that's a bog. Look at the plants. Aren't they amazing? You've got pitcher plants on the left, orange fringed orchids. I put that one especially for you, Richard. Richard is an orchid grower. Some bog rosemary. It's that blue stuff on the right. Um, and Peter Zale from Longwood Gardens is an orchid grower, and those are his pictures. But look what it does. It turns a problem into a feature. It creates a permanent solution. Aha, controls water flow. And of course, it improves the soil because of the plants. So, see, it's similar to a rain garden, only it's not just seasonal. Oh, squeeze me. It attracts birds, bats, frogs. All of them eat pests. Uh, it attracts beneficials who also eat pests. And it's really great if you want unique hardy plants. And it's very low maintenance. Once you establish your bog, it takes care of itself. So look at these pictures. And the one on the far left is a rare orchid that is right here on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. It is the Nanaimo bird's foot trefoil. And of course, down in the middle, we have Symplocarpus fididus, which is our Western skunk cabbage. In England, they grow them as exotics. Above that is another native, Erisema triphyllum. It's the jack in the pulpit. And look at the orange milkwort and the grass pink orchid. Amazing. These are all just bog plants. You set them up and then you just let it do its thing and take beautiful pictures. So don't be wasteful. This is our very first thing. Now, 5 minutes of watering by a hose. Now, hoses are all standard. An inch of water over a square meter. That's 9 square feet. Uses 25 liters or 5.5 imperial gallons, which is like six and a quarter US gallons. That's just standing with a hose. And think of what a square yard is and going down an inch, which is less than the knuckle, the big knuckle on your big finger, right? That's a lot of water. And so standing there for 5 minutes can be very wasteful. So, what are the symptoms of overwatering? Because now we want to talk about how to water your garden effectively. So, we're going to move on to managing parts of the landscape that you have to add water to. So, you may have taken it from another part. Maybe you are adding it from the municipal water system. Now, plants will always tell you when we do too much or too little. Too little. Now, I got to warn you before we go too far. There's math involved. Now, don't run away. Just my little "don't be wasteful" thing was a start. I'm not going to go over all the math with you. Your eyes will glaze over. You probably, some of you will run away because math is evil, but others, believe me, it's not. It's very useful. And on the last slides, I've got all the links of how to make really easy estimates. Things like the using a tuna fish can or a cat food can as a measurement, because this is mostly a guesstimate, but close enough, you know. Now, there is one site that is extremely scientific and is meant for people who are setting up a true irrigation system. You can work on that one as well if you like. But you can do a screen capture to get those links and then go into it yourself. So the symptoms of overwatering: yellow mottled leaves, they turn green and pale and fall off. They grow poorly. The tops flop over. And you wouldn't think, well, gosh, they got lots of water. Why would the tops flop over? Because they got too much water. The symptoms of, oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. There we go. The symptoms of underwatering are, again, yellowed or mottled leaves, but the leaves look dull and gray. Healthy leaves kind of have a reflective quality to them. Your lawn just kind of ends up going blue, green before it goes yellow, and it doesn't spring back when you walk on it. Be advised, though, that the majority of our lawns are what we call cool climate lawns. Now, for those folks on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., you use the Kentucky bluegrass, which of course does not work here in the Northwest. We grow our lawns that are a lot of clover, a lot of fescues, a lot of short ryegrass. They're lawns that will withstand a lot of winter rain. And so they're supposed to go dormant in summer. I lived in a neighborhood where everybody was manic about the green lawns, and they grumped at me about my yellow lawn, so I put a sign out that said, "Hush, my lawn is sleeping. It will wake in autumn." So let your lawn go yellow in the summer. When I lived in Colorado, you didn't dare, because if you wanted a lawn at all, you had to give it some water or it simply died. That was when the xeriscaping took hold in 1981, and we all learned to do different things. So the last thing is that the leaves wilt and they don't recover because the plant has been damaged. So the best irrigation method is what you do next. All of these can be used in different parts of the garden. And like the soaker hose, it's good for small beds, vegetable beds that are closely spaced, or you can have a drip line, which are those sort of brown, light brown, plastic-looking hoses that have holes in certain areas, so they only need spot watering. You can have an emitter, so it's like a drip line, but it's usually a black line, and it doesn't have a series of holes. It has one hole with a little spray emitter. And that's good for shrubs and trees where you want to soak the mulch at the roots. And the other thing about irrigation is understand that if you have mulch and you're letting it get dry, it will form a crust. And so when you use an emitter, it will simply run off. So one of the best things you can do for irrigating an area with mulch is make sure that that mulch doesn't form a crust. You just, when you're out there every so often, you fluff the top just lightly. And for some areas, You can use a hand watering sprinkler or hose and wet that mulch down in around your beds or your shrubs, and then let it get dry. And that's another kind of combination method. Overhead sprinkler is best for lawns, and that's where you have the emitter system. Or you can water it each by the base of a plant with a watering can. But you see, don't be wasteful. It's very good where supplemental water helps. Like if you've got a drought and you've got some plants that aren't very tolerant, you don't give it 5 minutes. You give it 1 minute and then test the depth. And if it's down an inch, that's enough. So here's your checklist. Do it early, do it deep, at a very slow rate, and not and make it accurate, and then measure the depth to the second knuckle. The finger never lies. Now, I shall share a secret. It's really hard for me to do. As soon as the top goes dry, I want to give the babies water, but it's like giving a kid candy. It's not a good idea. Trust the finger. The plant and the finger knows. Again, don't be afraid to have catch basins. And this is very good when you've got young plants because they need more water. So you make a raised soil or mulch around the drip line of a plant, and you fill that up. So you can do that inch above the soil and then let it soak in. And then you lower the loss by mulching. I told you the caveat for that. So here's a tip. When plants wilt on a hot day, check the soil. If the soil feels moist, even though they're wilted, wait until evening and let the plant recover. If it doesn't recover, take that watering can and just like count to 30. Don't even give it a minute, 30 seconds at the most. And then just leave it. And that will give it a boost when it's cool to do it. Now, on to the next slide here. But first, all these things I've been telling you, you're doing some of them already, maybe all of them. So let these concepts percolate because you've got more data now. We're going to start putting it together, and we'll get on to the next step. So look at this. This is sun scald on a squash plant. So one way, of course, to manage water is to create shade. So in the hotter climates, those sunshades are very important. And we do have a seminar on controlling sun in the garden and talking about sunshades and the different types and the different rating and how to use them. So another Master Gardener seminar. So here are the signs. Okay, you've got wilting, you've got cupping leaves, you've got rolling leaves, you've got blossom drop, you've got fruit drop, you've got fruit cracking, you've got bolting, you've got sun scald, and you've got ozone pollution damage. Now remember that pollution can mimic bacterial or fungal disease. So it's important, if you're going to diagnose something, to know its cause. Now, you can, when you're changing to smart water use, now that we've got all this information, the next time you go out in your garden, make a list. What needs changing? In other words, where? What needs changing in this corner? Why does it need changing? Is the plant in the wrong place? Is the landscape too dry? Do I just swap plants? What's wrong and why? And if I can't get water to it efficiently, then how am I going to solve it? So if I can't get water, do I create a rain garden? Do I do a downspout, a rain chain? Do I create a bit of a trench in that direction? If I have too much water, do I want to create a French drain, which is a permanent drain dug into the ground, and the trench is lined with gravel, and then the trench is covered up. So as the water goes through the area, it simply percolates out. Or do I want to create a dry bed? Very decorative, and we'll look at some pictures, and it can be always dry, except in those terrible rainstorms, and then it becomes a lovely bit of running water. You can get creative in changing your water and getting water to this dry area by even doing something like you've got, say, a big tree, and it's hard to get water to it. So if you dig a 6-inch hole that is 1 square meter or a square yard, 6 inches, okay, just 6 inches. And that's like the width, a little, if you have a large hand, it's about the width from your thumb to your little finger. And that holds 40 gallons of US water, or 33 imperial gallons. Now, that's very close to how much is a rain barrel. And you can either move the water there or fill it up, or let it fill up during winter and either have it run out with a hose onto the in and around the tree, or on the downside, simply open a flue or tilt the pond liner down, and it will run out over the tree. Or into that area. And if that area is clay, and you tromp it down, you don't even need a pond liner. So there's all sorts of things you can do. Just get a bit creative. Don't necessarily throw money at it. Now, the recovery method of dealing with a heat day or a heat wave is, again, only water early morning, water deep, so early and deep, mulch, and then wet the top, as I've talked about, just so the mulch is damp all the way through. Then let it dry down to the soil level. Never do transplanting in the heat. Don't ever prune in the heat unless it's emergency, which are the 3 Ds. Damaged, oh God, I'm going crazy. Dead, damaged, diseased. Increase needle humidity in your conifers. Conifers in dry summers will do what's called flagging. The ends of probably a square foot of the end of several branches will go brown and drop off. That's the plant's way of saving water, simply by lowering the number of branch ends it has to deal with. And if you miss them, then it stops a lot of flagging, because conifers need that mist to remain healthy. Remove the weeds because they compete for water, no fertilizer, and of course, change cultivars if you have to. Now, a heat day, which we get many more of than we used to everywhere. Here in the Northwest, we used to get 20 years ago, we used to get 1 to 2 heat days a year. Now we get close to a whole month spread out over the summer of heat days. And that means that it's 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 30 centigrade, before 11 o'clock in the morning. So if you're getting plants that are showing signs of all these things, then you want to create a sunshade for them, because even if you water them, they're not going to recover. It's too hot. You get blossom drop, you get incomplete pollination, because pollen goes sterile after 86 degrees. That's why in the desert, there's this, we used to have the two growing seasons. We had spring and we had autumn, and everything stopped in summer. You couldn't grow anything in summer. It was too hot. The pollinators don't fly, and you get if you try to force the plants, you get deformed vegetables, you get deformed fruit. It's completely sterile, or you get no fruit. And so even if you pollinate by hand, it doesn't work. And after pollen drop or blossom drop, some plants will not reset. For example, tomatoes, if you get blossom drop, they'll reset new fruit. They're a tropical vine and they're geared to continually blossom and fruit at the same time. The solanums can do that. And yet tomatillas won't. And either will squash. So you have to get that one. Now, what else have we got here? Oh goodness, I wouldn't put us up. We don't need to do that. And after blossom drops, as I say, some plants will not set new fruit. So the recovery method you have, and really, if heat days are becoming more common in your area, do think of changing cultivars. Check the links in the handouts and understand the difference, like for strawberries and raspberries. You can change to a day neutral type. They don't care how many hours of sunlight, because of course plants want that sunlight as a key to when to blossom and set fruit. They bear continuously, only care about the temperatures. So again, if the temperatures get hot, they will stop bearing. And like with raspberries, you can also do the everbearing. But with the day neutral, if you're north or at altitude, the temperatures are not going to get that hot for very long or very often. So that might be a choice. Whereas the everbearing, they're more like a reblooming iris or a reblooming rose. They stop when it's hot and then bear again late in the season. So you can think about that as I say, with an everbearing rose or a reblooming rose or a reblooming iris. Even your the rhododendrons, that's a different condition. I can't think of any other at the time, but think about those possibilities. Or you can simply plant things later in the season. So now that we've got all this stuff in our head, let's go on to how we're going to manage by design. And all dry gardens really began with rock gardens. Now, this one here is a Chatworth, which is a Victorian rock garden. But look at the latitude. The image is 93 north. That's like Edmonton in Alberta in Canada, or Hamburg, Germany, or Dublin, Ireland, or Liverpool, England. So that's very far north when you think of it. But look at this beautiful garden. So we've got different styles. And when you're looking at repairing your water problems or managing your water problems, by changing the style of the garden itself, it becomes a water management system and a way to keep your plants healthy. So you've got different ways of doing this. You've got your formal European, and I've got this thing about it's meant to be viewed from above, and that's when you think of places like Versailles or great manor houses with the clipped lawns or the clipped hedges, and that's it, where you stood on the balcony and you looked out. and or you have something smaller, which is the Karasansui, the Japanese meditation garden, very formal, abstract forms. That is an extension of the inside. It's often walled, but also if that's the purpose of your garden, to create a quiet space, that's one way you can do it. So the full landscape suited to a dry or uh, um, a climate that is dry. You have an English cottage style. You have the French Mediterranean style. You have an alpine garden, a crevice garden. Those are meant for high altitudes, north latitudes. You can see a similar alpine effect in this Chatworth garden. Or you simply want a minimalist design, which is my preference, a more Zen type design. And ultimately, you have a xeriscape. And this was originally, we'll talk specifically about that, originally designed for climates that are subject to drought and extreme seasonal changes. So altitude, desert, and we can have northern deserts as we do here in Canada, in British Columbia. So let's look at what elements that all of the styles are going to have in common. So sharp drainage. So remember where the water's traveling too fast and you need to slow it down. Maybe you have rocky ground, or you have a clay substrate that the water's traveling too fast. Sharp drainage, local rocks. You don't have to haul a bunch of stuff in. There's lots of stuff around. Compact plants. In other words, plants that are defined. They don't grow out beyond their drip line, whether they're large or small. They don't ramble. And if you want a rambling plant, you grow a ground cover. You use native plants from rocky areas, and you can use waterfalls or seasonal creeks. There we have water movement, controlled water movement. And then your trees are used for structure or accent, and importantly, for shade. And all rock gardens have low water needs. Now, there are some styles that need more water than a xeriscape, but they're generally low water needs. Now, this is the horticultural value of a rock garden. It's drought tolerant, requires less water, it's low maintenance, it controls erosion, it's ideal for sloped yards. It uses hardy trees which create windbreaks. Remember the windbreak for winter, or even for summer. They reduce water loss, they retain the soil, or you use mulch low shrubs to keep the soil healthy. You have quite a lot of design options. So you can use it to a small yard, for a big landscape, for an urban space, for a courtyard. And the thing about rock gardens, because of the way they combine, remember the three needs: air, soil, water, they attract pollinators. And because they use native plants or domesticated versions of native plants. For instance, here we have the wild bleeding heart, the Dicentra formosa. And the one garden I had, they popped up all over in one place. And so I simply enhanced that area by planting some more. And it was right place, right time. And boy, that corner of the garden just hummed. So it does support bees, it attracts butterflies, and all those caterpillars help feed birds and hummingbirds. It encourages the strong, deep root systems, and we'll explain a bit about that at the end, about how to plant them. And of course, all-season beauty, because interesting rocks, bare trees, or conifers can be very, very beautiful in all seasons. including winter. And I've just got a note here that the modern rock garden design, that is not the Mediterranean design, was developed by Beth Chatto, a British horticulturalist. So if you want to read about her, she's pretty fascinating. So some gardens, as I said, need medium water. So they're not a xeriscape, but they can be used as feature within an overall xeriscape design. Lots of people have a xeriscape or a very rocky, spare kind of area, but they got a really nice area for the vegetable garden. So in and among those rocks, they have vegetables planted. So informal styles, remember, as not the informal and not the formal, they all feature scented and colorful blooms. So a rock garden need not be monochromatic. So let's go on to some images. So here we have Spain, and look at that's a formal garden. You notice the repeating patterns of colors and the low plants and seen from above. And here we have the Japanese meditation garden. And again, look at the formal patterns and the clipped hedges and the sense of a water course, but not a real water course. And of course, it's very small and compact. And now this Hyde Hall Garden in Essex, this is just northeast of London. Now London is 52 degrees north latitude, I think. This garden, formal garden, now it does have an arboretum. It was put in without additional water, and it has never, ever been watered, ever. And look at it. Isn't that something? Amazing light on the Atlantic, so different, very golden, whereas our light in the Pacific Northwest is very blue. So here we have, in a formal garden, we have that symmetrical layout, the low hedge, the geometric shaped planting beds, the repeating colors. Look at the structural form that the trees take. Even though they kind of look casual, they create an important structure. And just the drama, particularly in the Japanese style of combining the rock and the tree. Clip shapes. So we have rosemary, cypress, bay laurel, yew. None of those are harmed by continuing to clip and shape. But look at the expanse of gravel and crushed stones. There's no stepping stones in these. And there's very little or no turf in these. Now, the architect is also, the architectural part of it is also the hardscape. So you don't really see it here, but we'll see it in other areas with the pots or the stone urns and the dry retaining walls, which you see more of in the Spanish on the left side, the Spanish image, and the arboretum on the right from England. And again, the minimalist water troughs, dry beds that look like streams. This is all the formal design. And although they are elements in the informal dry garden, you see them really standing out in the formal garden. Now, the formal dry garden is not necessarily low maintenance. It's meant to be viewed from above, as I said before. And it takes a fair amount of maintenance. It's low water, but high maintenance. So here are some really beautiful designs. We have the French gravel garden, which is really classic. And the elements of this really bring this quiet space into the urban environment or a protected space in a farm setting. And relaxed elegance, sophistication. Look at now here, echoing back to the Versailles idea and the formal garden. It again has structured pathways, a few clipped hedges, but you notice how it's softened by the informal planting. And particularly in the French gardens, they really have very highly scented plants, very romantic, with the roses and the salvia and the hydrangea and right. And the details in the French garden. And the reason that I'm talking about these designs is that when you combine these design elements into your dry garden, they coordinate and create a feel. And so by choosing a general idea of the style of dry garden that you're looking for, and always remember, form grows out of function. What is it I want to do? How do I want to live in this area? And what kind of labor is good, and what's my pocketbook? So you notice, like on the left, look at that. There's an espaliered fruit tree, and there's a potager garden. So on the right, it really is more elegant, and it always has a place to sit. It usually has a fountain, although none is shown in either of these, and it has very, very little ground cover. It relies on that pea gravel, and it creates this elegance. You can have culinary herbs. They're great plants, great perennials. You always have an eating area. You can see where there's the espaliered fruit tree, or a seating area, always a place to eat in a French garden, and sometimes pergolas. And you're going to use these types of tones, the warm tones. Okay. Now let's look at the English dry garden. Now the English country garden, and you'll see this looks quite familiar, has the same elements, but the dry garden is dry. Okay. And the elements create this inviting, far less pretentious setting, and this sense of chaotic abundance. Everything is just tumbling like kittens. It's also good for a slightly more northerly climate. So you'll see more dense plantings than in the French style, and how the shrubs also shade the ground. So you'll have a larger area, and you use the shrubs themselves to help create shade and reduce the water needs. A lot more vertical interest than in the French style. You'll notice, like, it had one tree and the wall, right? Where here there's more three-dimensional woodland sort of style. And you have more durable blooms, like salvia and dusty miller and crocosmia. And here you have more, because it's further north, the type of plants have aromatic leaves and culinary herbs, not just herbs like what's the plant that creates absinthe? Wormwood, right? Things like that. Here you've got rustic gates, and you might not have an eating area, although these show it, but you have protected seating. You'll notice that on the left, they're under a pergola. And often you'll see a bird bath, rustic type pottery. And here we have, again, similar blooms to the traditional thirstier country garden, cottage garden. But those rounder textures, and you see the flagstones with the ground cover between them, because they don't need watering. The stones themselves collect the water in the surface, and it feeds the ground cover. So there's a much cozier backyard welcoming feel. Okay. And again, you're using a combination of warm and cool pastels, and you've got darker foliage. And so they stand out against that darker foliage. So when you're looking at making your garden drier, think about these images and look more, and think about how you can have what you have now in your garden, but maybe changing some plants and changing some of the design styles to turn it into a dry garden. Now, the other type of dry garden is the alpine garden. And you have on the left a crevice garden, you have a scree, and you have another type of uh, alpine trough. Okay, so you have the outcroppings on the hill. You have, look at those beautiful low alpine plants. And of course, on the left, you have a lot of succulents. So lots of ways to create greenery and yet have the beauty and texture of rocks and gravel. Now, here's a crevice garden profile from the New York Times. So you can see how the plants are reaching down through the gravel and the crevices into the soil below. And we'll talk a bit about planting later on. Come on, you can do it. So you see the colors that you can get with just these lush, vibrant colors. On the left, this is something from Getty Images, but you have Dusty Miller and you have these violets and is that heuchera? Looks like it's heuchera. And look at this, the center one is a Colorado, so very dry, high plains desert in the Colorado. And look at that with the sun coming through the tree, which is protecting that, that area. Some nasty winds in on the eastern slope where we lived. And here is Van Dusen Gardens in Vancouver. It is the Erica Den, or Erica Glen, and it's a classic rock garden, really beautiful. And here we have dry vegetables. So on the left, California, raised bed with straw, but also by the look of that, perhaps some redwood needles, which was something I used as mulch. They work great. And you can see the soaker hoses, so very effective in that raised bed. And here is Nantucket, Maine. Now you see how they've combined that all the gravel and used stone in the raised bed. And the neat thing about the stone is that the first image, the first bits of spring, you get the sun warming up those stones. I used that to great effect and was quite surprised because I had the wooden raised beds and I had the stone raised beds, and the heat from those stone raised beds gave me at the end of the season, they gave me about a week more produce in my garden. I was quite surprised. So here we get to the meat of it all, the xeriscaping. Now, xeriscaping doesn't mean no, it's not zero-scaping. It's from the Greek, meaning which is xeris, I think, which means dry, and land. What it is that it means developing a garden that uses only as much water as is necessary to create beauty and charm, and choosing those plants accordingly. Look at all the color. And this is a front yard in Denver, Colorado. Now, the studies done when they developed xeriscaping, it was 1981. There was a terrible drought in 81. We were all really shocked by it. And people fought against lowering their water until Denver began to run out of water. Chapman Dam just began to go away. And they developed this modern DIY set of design rules. It was inspired by traditional rock gardens. It's now followed in drought-affected areas and semi-arid climates because it's easy to follow. Okay, and it was developed by the Denver Water Board, and they coined the phrase xeriscaping. It relies on water conservation first and foremost. Now, soil improvement and stabilization, because when you're in the Rocky Mountain Desert, you lose your soil. It just does not stay where it's supposed to. And you have areas that have very high snow, and you have other areas on particularly on the eastern slope that the soil just blows away. It has unique aesthetics to it. You can see the crevice garden in the middle, and then you can see the gravel paths. So how that was informed by those traditional designs. And it uses climate appropriate plants. So you've got some asters, and you've got looks like rock rose, and so they all work very well. And because they're a prairie style, you notice most of it is quite low. And you can have lawns, but that's climate dependent. Most people in the Denver area go back to bunch grass and stone. You use stone and gravel, and also some organic bark mulch. And it uses probably more native plants than any other style of dry garden. And so if you have a dry garden, even in the Pacific Northwest, where you've got lots of rain in winter and a very, very dry summer, which is getting drier and longer, or drier for longer, the native plants are geared to it. You're creating diversity by combining it, and you're taking care of your pollinators. We have three styles: desert, prairie, and seasonal. And here's what it looks like in the three zones. And you can see it's very different. This is British Columbia. This is a seasonal creek. And this is the desert style from Santa Fe, where I lived. Now, here we have the desert style, how it relies on succulents, the warm colors, the native stones, the exotic plants from the succulents. The prairie style, it's meant for harsh winters. It combines grasses and conifers and herbaceous perennials for winter snow. And it combines warm and cool colors. And then you have the seasonal style, which is what you see in a warmer climate and a wetter, generally wetter climate. And you see more of this in the Northwest. So it's the most varied plantings. It will combine succulents. I mean, we have native succulents here on the West Coast. And look at all the different types of flowers. It likes bulbs and uses conifer for winter color, and fruit trees. And it's got the cool colors in the stone with the warm colors and the saturated hues of the conifers. So change one area each year. That's it. You don't have to do it all at once. Your garden and the plants will thank you. Just as we said before, look at your priority, do one section. And this is what this is how you change from what you have to the dry garden. Now we're getting short on time, and I want to talk a bit about planting. So here we have learn all those things, improve your soil, limit your turf, change to appropriate plants, group your plants towards water needs. So if you have a slope, put your thirsty plants on the top, train your water to go downhill, and don't water the things at the bottom. That's a basic in Xeriscape design as well. Introduce more ground covers and use them around path stones to keep the area cooler. So you can use all these ideas. They are in your handout. Design for your seepage on the gentle slope. Make irrigation goal, catching and redirecting the water. Go to a correct irrigation type. So you see, we've gone through all these little details. And when you look at the details and then look at the design that you can create, all this makes sense. So look at this wonderful little dry garden. Isn't that lovely? Um, and this is how you plant in a gravel garden. Now, I didn't really think, I thought, okay, yeah, fine. It's not going to work until I found in a very rocky area, and it had river stones. So this is like, these things were 6 inches across. They're big round rocks. And underneath they were put there because there was uh, very compressed clay. And I saw all these strawberries, and they've been growing there for 2, 3 years. And so I decided to transplant them. I pulled it back. These guys had root systems that went all through the rocks, right down into the top of the clay. And of course, on top of the clay was all the detritus from the natural mulch and dirt. And there was only a few inches of it, big, fat plants, big, fat strawberries. They did it all themselves. So by scraping back 6 or 8 inches of the soil, set it aside, amend the soil if you need for whatever plant or because the soil needs some amendment. And then you position that plant up high, and you cover the root ball with the small gravel, but very small. Don't want to crush it. And go to the guide for planting an alpine trop, very similar. You saw the cross section. And here's the important points. Be aware of the meristeme nexus, which is where both the plants and the root systems emerge. And you have to keep that above the soil line, just the way you do with grafted trees. That's where you're putting the gravel, and then your roots can go down. Mats with matted root balls. Put them in a raised bed with mulch around the roots because they do not seek deep ground. And gravel right up next to them will compact the root ball. Remember what I told you about that one poor little rhododendron. Plant your bulbs on top of the soil and then cover it with round stones. And again, plant your strawberry crowns and iris tubers so the crown is at the top of the stones and the roots pointing down. Works. Compaction kills plants. So here we have, use the stones that are the right finger width, 2 to 3 finger widths inside the drip line. If you're installing tables and chairs under the tree, use something that's light, like the faux wood interlocking tiles, but it allows a permeable surface. Then you lay a permeable barrier of small mesh. Don't use landscape cloth on top of the soil. And then you can, if you need to get to that, you can pull the gravel back to work on a planted area. And then you place the accent stones outside the shrub line or the drip line of a shrub. The rock is about 1/3 of a height. And there we go. The only other thing is if the small tree or shrub is going to drape, then wash the roots thoroughly and arrange around the area or around the rock itself. And there you go. These last two are just your books and your databases. And that's it. Do we have any questions? We've got a few minutes left. We've got lots of things going on in the chat here.
I don't see any questions right now. If anybody has any questions, they can pop them in the question and answer section. Joe, that was an incredible amount of information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope people didn't fall asleep.
No, not at all. And I have very specific plants in my yard that needed me to get this information today. So
good.
they're thanking you.
Oh, good. Well, good. Yeah, say hi to your plants.
I have some very wilted hellebores that really should be moved to a shadier location. So
right.
I might do that this fall.
Well, and also the idea that more water is good
Mm,
is um, rarely true unless it's a bulb plant.
right,
Uh,
right.
Now, can you tell me what type of garden I can fit my dwarf Japanese maples into? That's a really good question because the dwarf Japanese maple is such a beautiful, graceful plant,
Hmm.
and fits into how can I put it? The the only style of garden I have ever seen a Japanese maple not look good in is one whose shrubs come almost as high as the tree, um, and where there is no space around the tree to allow you to enjoy its beauty. One of the biggest mistakes people make with Japanese maples is that they do not prune them correctly. They shave them off, they look like an umbrella, and they're not supposed to look like that. They are meant to be in a minimum of 3 layers with space between the layers, and they're meant to be very graceful. Because of that interior space in the Japanese maple, you want to be able to look into the tree and have space around the tree. So it is quite suited to a Japanese type of garden. But I've also seen it in a woodland garden where there's kind of a sunny spot, surrounded by woodland plants. So that's a possibility. A plant will fit into almost every type of garden as long as its soil needs, its water needs, and its air needs are met, and that the natural beauty and movement and shape of the plant is highlighted. So that's, of course, what I was just talking about with the Japanese maple. So I hope that gives you an idea, because there's no one type of garden that a Japanese maple has to be in. As I said, I've seen it in Zen gardens. I've seen it in just regular old front yards. And I've seen it very, very small and very, very tall. I mean, dwarf is 6 feet for a big Japanese dwarf maple, and I've seen them 3 feet. I've seen them 30 inches. So as long as those needs are met for the plant, your Japanese maple will be happy. It will look beautiful, and people go, "Ooh, that's nice." Learn how to prune it. It's not that hard. Anything else?
So you were given kudos from Australia by
Oh,
Katie.
oh, how
And
lovely.
she said it was very informative.
Oh, well, Lydia, thank you very much. Um, it's so nice to have faraway people with the same climate in Canberra. Although you're quite high, and as you say, the limestone plains. So boy, you get really hot. Wow, and extreme. If you go to the plant database listed on the last slide. It's OXA, the Okanagan Xeriscape Association. They have some great ideas for plants that would be suitable to a climate of yours that's so extreme. Um, okay, needs planting. 20 and 28 years old. I guess that's the maple
The
tree. And
maples.
yes, when you replant that maple, just make sure that you take it out of the pot, put it in a big old wheelbarrow filled with water, and get all the dirt off those roots, and let the roots get very soft. It'll take a couple of hours, and then put it in the ground and spread those roots out. So it'll be good.
You
Um,
want to watch a presentation on root watching. One of
Thank
our
you.
master
Yes.
gardeners actually has put one out, Deb Garad, And you can find it on either YouTube or at the Vancouver Island Regional Library website.
Here we go. Can't grow clematis. Don't feel bad, Terry. I struggle with clematis too. I've grown beautiful clematis when it's been in my garden and I bought the house and the clematis is already there. So it forgives me. Clematis are notorious for, what is it? Weeping, creeping, and then leaping. So
Yeah.
clematis will take time to establish, and there are enough different types of clematis that you need to know what'll work in your area. Okay.
Cool roots, cool roots, and full sun.
Yes. Yeah. They like to grow up in between things. And knowing what group they are in pruning is extremely important. The libraries, ours here on the island as well, have some very, very good books on success with clematis. But don't feel bad. I struggle with them as well. But don't tell anyone. Okay.
We won't say a word to anybody, Joe.
Thank you, Richard. So I think we're just about 8 o'clock and it's time to
Mhm.
go. I want to thank you all for coming, and it's always an honor to share what knowledge I have. And it is very important that I'm reaching out to other gardeners who care as much as I do about keeping the world green, one garden at a time. so, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for bringing all of your knowledge to us and to people who will watch the video in the future. I will have this video up on YouTube and send out the link for that later this week. And also, please join us for our next virtual gardening lecture, which is going to be a tour of the Horticultural Center of the Pacific. And that's coming on September the 14th.
Yes, and it will be the history, the different groups that are involved with
Great.
it, as well as pictures, the volunteers that work there, and all of that. So thank you. We'll see you in September.
Right.
Yes,
Happy gardening.
Happy
thank
gardening.
you.